It's a little after 10. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Notice the meeting was properly posted Monday, May 9th, 2017. Item number 3, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the regular scheduled meeting held on May 3rd, 2017. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried. I would like to make a motion to defer items 4 through 11 till our next scheduled meeting. We just recently, a week or so ago, we had the department heads and we talked to them. I figured this time that we could just do that on a monthly basis instead of covering that all today.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Well, it's on the agenda, and there are some questions I would have liked to ask.
Okay, well, that's fine.
But
Well, I noticed.
he doesn't appear to be here, so I guess.
Okay, well, I believe on the mail out that it indicated that the department heads did need to be here today. But if we have some questions, we can go ahead and.
But he's not here, so.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, that will take us to item number 12. Discussion and possible action to provide guidance to the BOCC HR staff on what role they should play when an employee of a department that is not serviced by the BOCC HR department requests HR to investigate a potential violation of HR employee handbook.
I guess this would be where I talk, right?
Yes, Dan, go ahead.
Morning.
Good morning.
Recently, I was contacted by an employee of a, we'll call it a department that we don't provide HR services for. This employee complained of issues that would potentially be in violation of our handbook, HR policy, and potentially legally. And because I don't have standing with that department to provide HR services nor to do an investigation on those allegations, I talked to the district attorney and it was recommended that we bring this to this committee for guidance on how to deal with those. Currently the handbook says that if you have issues, you take it to your HR person or your elected official. I don't know how to respond to this employee. I think not responding is probably not a really good idea, but I don't know how to proceed and maybe turn it over to ask counsel to speak on that as well.
It's a policy question.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Dan?
If you or our BOCC HR department not look into or investigate, can the employee go directly to the DA's office with any sort of complaint about HR issues? They just have to go up through what's in the handbook, and that is their
HR person or their elected official.
Didn't we address or have some proposed amendments to the handbook regarding that? Seems like within the last 6 weeks or something there was some sort of discussion about who can be complained to.
Not to mine.
No, I don't remember that discussion. And we've got 3 members of that committee in here.
Okay.
I don't remember that. So just looking for guidance, policy, board approved yesterday for us to handle the court clerk's HR. So that's one that we can deal with, and it does not come out of their office.
I mean, I'll tell you, just thinking out loud, what my thoughts are, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about, employees that have complaints or issues that, they, for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable or afraid to take up the chain of command that's out. At the same time, I know you have plenty to do, and I know your staff has plenty to do, and they do a good job of that. And, we kind of have jurisdictional lines that are drawn, and it's a certain officer, elected official wants to have their own HR department. They can have their own HR person that handles that. And I don't know that we need to be crossing those lines and getting involved in that business any more than we want them getting involved in areas that are outside of their jurisdiction, so to speak. So, I haven't had a chance to, it's the first I've heard of this, so I haven't had a chance to talk to my commissioner about it. But, just talking from a policy perspective would be, you handle the HR areas that you've been given and
Let me,
not cross those lines.
and Dan or council stop me. I think the assumption that we might be talking about other elected officials, people complaining to Dan, I think that is fairly well outlined in how that process works in the handbook. And with only a couple of exceptions, I think that employee, as contemplated in our handbook right now, is required to go through their HR chain of command. One of the exceptions would be something like sexual harassment, et cetera, that actually involves either the HR person or an official. They could go to any other elected official with their complaint. I think what we might be talking about here are more of quasi-departments of the Board of County Commissioners, where the board clearly, and it's the case for any official as well, but in this instance, is the liability holder. And there is not an elected official in the sense of a county elected official. And so when these employees, and I think employees from these various entities have come to HR before, it's what do we do and how do we handle this? And I think, at least in part, the board could play a more active role in that situation. And I think it perhaps is in the best interest that we have at least a representative from the board who reports directly to the board, who is involved in these instances in the event that there's potential liability for the county as a whole. So
Makes sense.
I think that, now how does that look? How does that work? I think the idea in general is good. And I can think of 3 or 4 entities that perhaps would fit into that model. So I don't know that we're necessarily talking about another of the truly elected county officials.
My thoughts, and I appreciate what both of you have said. My thoughts is number one, we got a duplication of services. The department in question already has an HR department. And secondly, we're not compensated. In other words, if Dan or whatever is required to do an investigation, he's using his resources for that investigation, and there's no compensation. And that's another concern. My feelings is that if the department has an HR department, then that it needs to stay within that HR department. If it has to be escalated, then so be it.
Good. And Steve, I appreciate that, but I would say at what cost are we saving a penny when potentially there's
Yeah, and
hundreds
you
of
can be
thousands of
exactly
dollars
right,
on
Joe,
it?
I don't know, I think that sometimes this could create an environment of dependence where even though they have an HR department, it's a lot easier for them to pick up the phone and call Dan than do their due diligence and try to rectify the situation.
Well, and I haven't talked to Dan about this, but I wouldn't envision that Dan would supplant that HR department. I would think that those two would have to work hand in hand.
Right.
I think what we get with having our own people involved is we get potentially the other side of the story. We get a little more in-depth. And the board at least has some ability through this committee or directly from the horseshoe to communicate with Dan their wishes. But again, we're sort of in uncharted waters.
I think you may have persuaded me with the liability argument. The question that I have, though, with what you just said is, the board would have authority over any BOCC department.
The board does, correct.
Right, and the director of that department and the HR person within that department without having to go through Dan.
I'm not aware of any board department, talking about those that are currently appearing on our agenda, that has their own HR department.
Okay, so then I'm confused by what you said earlier about...
There are entities in which the board does not necessarily have clearly defined roles of authority, in which they are the check writer, where others are able to develop policies and procedures that may or may not be approved by the board and or budget board, who are county employees, but yet the board has little day-to-day operational control of.
No, like juvenile?
Perhaps juvenile,
For example.
election board, community sentencing was one of those entities until the board cleared that up. Drug court was one of those entities. We have a number of them.
And from a liability standpoint, if they got dinged for sexual harassment claim or something like that, the county would be liable.
That's an issue that we have not had a chance to fully litigate. There's an Attorney General's opinion that says that, and it specifically addresses juvenile bureaus, that the employees of juvenile bureaus are county employees. Now, the AG declined to say that, go so far as to say that they're county employees for all purposes. That leaves the door wide open depending on what, if there's a violation of federal law, let's say FLSA or FEMLA. The rules can change in terms of liability sometimes. We could be construed, if it were fully litigated, we could be construed as a joint employer. Or depending on how little or how much control is exercised, as a matter of fact, we might not be an employer for liability purposes at all. But those are things that haven't been fully tested in the courts, and there's a lot of different contexts in which they can come up. Even within the employment law area. So I can't give you a definitive answer there. But it is an interesting issue.
Well, and that makes me nervous that it's not really well established, and
Absolutely.
so therefore, a judge could very well say, listen, they made you aware, the county, of what was going on, and you had this policy and had the hands of your HR person. They couldn't, for whatever reason, go through their HR person, or did, and it didn't, nothing happened, and saying, you didn't investigate, you're on the hook. So with it being...
That's certainly a possibility. But the flip side to that same coin is that depending on the amount of control that is exercised, you are increasing your likelihood of being found at least a joint employer.
the law refers to this as a sticky wicket,
without question.
late term part.
Is it possible that the board employ an outside investigator to handle that?
So, back to what Randy was saying, and back to Aaron, does this increase our exposure as far as the sticky wicket if we're investigating and using county dollars and stuff to make an investigation?
Well, in the absence of any clear decisions from the court in these contexts, I can't tell you how, I can't really give you a true risk assessment of what that does to your liability. I can only say that the greater control that is exercised, the greater likelihood that the Board of County Commissioners would be held liable, but there is no guarantee on the opposite end of the spectrum. There's no guarantee that if you exercise at zero control, that you still won't be held liable. That's the conundrum.
But obviously, you could just turn that around if a department that currently has an HR department calls Dan and wants an investigation, that Dan could say, well, I've got a list of 3 investigators that you could use, that they could go out and retain an investigator. Right?
Well, one of your concerns was expense.
Right, and they would bear that expense.
Well, the county bears the expense. I mean,
Well, no, I mean, if Dan referred, well, it depends on the department.
it's a really bad spot to be in.
It is.
And so I think ultimately you have to weigh what Aaron said, is the county's risk greater if the board, the big 3 board,
Right.
appear to exercise more control, or is the county's risk greater in the event that a complaint is made, it's found to be factual, it gets all the way up through the court, or the EEOC or the DOJ takes this, and then the county's found liable. So you're trying to, in an undefined world, mitigate risk to the county as a whole. For me, I would lean towards the side of caution. And when Dan is made aware of something in an undefined world, that Dan would at least be involved in order to help mitigate the risk that our 3 bosses are ultimately responsible for. And that might not please council, because
So
they're saying perhaps we take the risk of more control and more liability.
So and I need clarification because I'm not sure, are you thinking that the county's exposure would be less if Dan was involved?
I can't, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying,
Would it be greater if Dan was involved?
I think what Erin has said is she can't tell you either way, and I can't tell you either.
Okay.
If you're asking me to pick
Right.
between the 2,
Right.
if our bosses are going to be asked to write a check to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer that our HR director and our HR department be involved in order to ensure as best as possible that all the steps necessary to truly look into an incident were followed. And whether that means that mitigates risk or that increases risk, it may be on a case-by-case basis as well, but I don't know, absent some statutory change, that we're gonna, or a court decision, that this is gonna be solved. And so I think the board, the board is gonna continue, or Dan is probably gonna continue to get complaints. And so,
And that, Mr. Chairman, kind of goes to my question, if I may. Dan, what, kind of real world examples, to the extent that you can, I'm not saying giving us details, but I mean, how often does this happen? Is this a once a week, once a month, or maybe a couple times a year, or a handful of times over your tenure here? What are we talking about?
There have been a few instances
Okay.
over my career. This one is probably the most complex and potentially the most lengthy type of investigation that would have to be done. Dealing with people who may or may not be cooperative in providing information to that. And it's pretty convoluted. A lot of them, I mean, and in some, at the request of the district attorney, we've investigated, which were pretty straightforward and, take a couple of days. This could take a couple of weeks, and could potentially involve both Karen and myself, and we're an office of two in HR. And so staffing becomes an issue, and the amount of time that we end up having to spend with that and being off-site, especially when we picked up another department this week. But it does happen. And in my training, I've been doing HR for 25 years, and in my training, I have a duty to act when I am confronted with a situation similar to this. Right now, I'm not sure how I act. I have made council aware of the situation and asked for them to guide, and they suggest we come here. This is a tough one. I mean, some of them are pretty easy to deal with. This one is not. I have about 70 pages of documents that go along that have been provided to me from this employee on stuff, and it's pretty convoluted.
Well, in my experience in the private sector and in some governmental agencies too, when things like this come up, you have HR involved, there may be a general counsel or a staff attorney, if it's a state agency or department or something, that's kind of walking alongside HR in the investigation and things like that. So I feel to a certain extent we're kind of hamstrung here because we don't have that.
Right. And that's why I threw out that perhaps we bring in an outside investigator to do this, and can take an unbiased look at the particulars of this situation.
I don't know that, that's always an option, isn't it?
Sure.
I mean, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be the default. That can be, if we're overwhelmed in HR and we have some sort of, again, legal term of our woolly booger that shows up, and it's like we've got to bring someone in, and the board can make that decision that it's worth while. But right now, we just need to decide whether that can even really come through your office, or if your office just says, not.
If an elected official that we don't serve contacted me and said, would you come investigate this? I would check with my bosses, and more than likely that would be a situation that say, yeah, we'll go do that. This is an employee. The official, the department have not requested it. The employee is. I think it's a little different situation.
Would it be safe to assume that on occasion that this entity itself has called and asked for your assistance, though?
They have.
And you have helped them.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be, this is your first glance in stepping into this entity or another to provide service.
That is correct.
There's been occasions where they've called and you've assisted.
Correct.
So it's one of those deals, we want you when we want you, but when we don't, we don't.
Much.
discussion?
It's a policy matter.
Someone have a motion?
This is for council. Would this matter qualify for an executive session of this group so that we all might be better informed what we're looking at?
I think that'd be helpful.
I think, well,
And if you need, Aaron, I put you on the spot, and I didn't mean to.
No,
If we need to.
okay, let me try to answer it this way. Yes, there would be a way to bring it under attorney-client communications for executive session, but in order to still comply with the Open Meetings Act, you still have to give notice as to what investigation or potential claim is being discussed. And that, in and of itself, might be the trickier situation.
And by that, we would specifically have to identify the individual, or?
Yes.
Do we have a pending claim at this time? Is there any litigation?
No.
Okay. And I agree, I do. If we could get into executive session, I think we could be a little bit more candid in what we're discussing.
Well, if we can't do an investigation or hear about an investigation without publicizing to the world, you know, the nature and potential parties involved and things like that, then we have little choice but to direct our HR department to proceed with that. And, you know, one of the concerns, I think, is just as an institution, the county as a whole, which is, I think, something that you've been saying, Joe, if we have this institutional knowledge about something but do nothing, you know, how does that ultimately, I mean, we have liability legal considerations, we have public service, we have employees, we have political, I mean, all of those are considerations to look at. I don't mean like partisan political,
But yeah, I know,
as a governmental
I know what
entity.
you mean.
So, but that being said, I don't know what type of, I don't know what the motion would look like with relation to guidance.
Obviously, yeah, you're not asking us to tell you to go out and do this. You're asking us to make a recommendation to the board to tell you to go out and do this, correct? Or are we able to go out and tell him, the way this committee was created, to do this?
My recollection, and I really, really hate giving opinions based just on my memory because it is horrible, but my recollection of the resolution creating this body would allow this body to give direction to its department heads in matters like this. That does not necessarily preclude if this body would rather refer it to the full Board of County Commissioners to have them make the decision to do that.
How about we just recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they let the head of the HR use his discretion?
Oh.
Wow.
And that's,
A pun.
and the resolution was I think, Aaron, as you said, it's pretty, I think it does allow us to, perhaps ask or direct Dan to proceed.
Is there a reason why could the reason why the employee come to you is because the complaint, or his complaint is about an elected official?
This doesn't have it, this has, again, the handbook is quite clear on how county elected officials, this process would work, that have their own HR department. They are required unless,
And they have their own.
again, we're talking about a quasi-county entity, not one of the people that reside in this building.
Okay.
But again, I'm trying to figure out, how do we not just default it so that, we're putting this, when it clearly could be and should be handled within that department? And how do we delineate between that and when you should be, or?
And that's a great question.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. I mean, he can be default to have a HR problem, whoever this department is, and they call Dan.
Yeah.
And I think that gets to the crux of the question is, I mean, if they contact me, what's my duty? And I don't know whether this individual has made themselves avail to what's in the handbook or not. The structure going to their HR and elected official.
Which handbook?
And that could be the extent of your, and that could,
That is a
legitimate question.
Yeah.
and that could be the extent of your investigation in some, or your involvement, I should say. In some instances, I need to direct you to the procedure or the process. This is a case where it should go through that, or this is a case where I can understand that's not going to be available to you in the realistic sense. Okay. Joe, what's your motion?
That we recess for 5 minutes. That's my motion.
Got a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll be back at about 10:40.
Mr. Satterwhite, do you need individual department heads here or no longer on the agenda?
I do not.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming. It's always good to see you.
That's not fine.
Could say we're
Watch
football program got in trouble, president had knowledge.
Yeah, I was saying
Let's go football.
Well, it's a different superhero every day. It's a Pebble.
Oh, you got Pebble.
Smartwatch, which, like, a week after I got it,
Yeah.
they sold the company that fit it.
Yeah.
So they don't make them anymore. But I didn't know if I wanted it.
You gotta act.
Smartwatch and like the phone watch was way, or Apple Watch was way too.
I'm not on this.
Well, and so like yesterday was Captain America. My boys picked out this watch.
Well, they're not yet.
Yesterday was Captain America.
I call
The day
911.
before that, I think it was either Batman or Spider-Man.
It's gonna go to a.
How appropriate.
First, it's been-
Right, exactly. So all of
It's
this,
on my head.
and I can text from it. It'll do quick text and stuff, but like this, I gotta show you my Christmas one.
I mean,
It just changed.
that,
Yeah, this is dark
the
sweater.
formation of this committee was avoid that, because that is a potential open meeting violation.
Open meeting,
Yes,
you
can
do
do
that.
Darth Vader's a
information
Christmas
one way,
sweater.
Oh, that is cool.
but in the
Like a
reality,
Kentucky Christmas. Yes, exactly.
Smaller county.
that's the way you
That is nice.
take
You
and.
know, and just, and they have, some more professional looking ones. I have a baseball one, so that when the Red Sox are playing,
I wouldn't
I mean, it's telling me to score inning by inning, and it'll tell me.
I think you'll see a version of that come from Vivid.
Well, that's why they acquired it, is because they didn't have smartwatch cloud. Right. They sold 200 million units. Pebble sold like 2 million units. They were
Really on top of a whole wearable device.
Exactly.
Or health innovation, kind of started that trend.
Yeah, and so it makes sense. And again, it's
That's why y'all
like
got
old
paid the big bucks.
school graphics mainly, very kind of, not
I was
real
hoping that you were a
sharp.
comic book fan.
Well, that too, but,
And that's the biggest concern.
it'll do,
They're not gonna
it
do it themselves.
has most of the villains, most of the heroes, Marvel and DC, and, but it's just kind of funny because I'm actually getting up, I'm getting up to speak at my grandfather's funeral in this little church in Pawnee, Oklahoma, and I look down and my watch face has head. And I'm like, that is probably a little bit improper. And so I changed it to something more appropriate.
Does that affect our ruling on any at all? Your discussions?
More than likely.
So,
Good, then we just put it on the stake.
what is being done can be, I mean,
Toss me the gym,
Randy,
Thank you, sir. I love the punt on 2nd and 30.
Yeah, exactly. That was Paul first and 10. That was I was like, well, yeah, let's just go.
That's a quick kick.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we did advance the ball a little bit with all that discussion. That
That's
was,
why I said 2nd and 3.
that's right. That's a run with a gain of 2. That's another run with a gain of 2.
so here's what's currently happening up there. So the question is, are we trying to rule on something that's going to be solved for us?
You jamming the signal in here?
No, sir. I am. But there could be interference from the rack.
Just to muddy the waters a little bit.
Yeah. I read it twice and to try to figure out if we're talking about all or some or specify.
Yeah, because the end of it is the questionable part. Centers would be a community property rather than something.
You have a motion to return back to open session. Second. All those in favor?
Hi.
Motion carried. Okay, back to item number 12.
All right. I'm working on drafting a motion. If there is another item, Steve, perhaps we could move on to, or
Okay.
you guys be patient and wait on main benefits. Next item.
Madam DA, does that require a motion to delay this? Okay. Well, since we're kind of going out of kilter, I'd like to go to
Another legal term of art.
item 14. Discussion and possible action to make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners regarding organization and implementation of the VOCC Employee Benefits Department, including but not limited to providing staffing levels, salaries, job descriptions, advertising positions, and interviewing applicants. I think Dan has done some work as far as the specific items concerned.
I have. Where would you like to start?
Have we determined, or basically you at this point, since we haven't looked at it formally, as far as the number of people that would be required to run the department?
Well, we currently have 4 people in that department under the county clerk. The director, a benefits specialist, a retirement specialist, and a health and wellness specialist, who also does other duties with ESS, with timekeeping, with payroll,
Right.
clerks of the board, and other things. So, the director currently handles benefits as well as payroll and HR for the county clerk. The question on the table then is, I need, what staffing do you want when we move? Well, the first question I have is, are we still proceeding on? Because I know we had a plan yesterday on space, and that got killed in the BOCC meeting. And so are we still moving forward with benefits going in the BOCC?
Well, it's already been approved.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a done deal.
Well, but the space was also put for the committee. And then that got,
Well, not this committee,
infrastructure committee, yes.
recommended relocation of the county clerk's MIS and the abstract.
Right.
And so, that was rejected, and so now it will be set for the time being, at least when this new department's created, it's going to be housed where essentially those functions are already being done, which makes sense.
Not really, but.
Well,
I thought it was because of not having funding, so if funding was available, then that would, because that's what it sounded like Ryan was talking about.
Right. The item that created the new department that the commissioners approved was not contingent on funding, it was just to create the department. But anyway, that being said, why don't we move back now to item 12. So hold that.
Get the punt ready. Punt back to the other item we want to punt. I would move we punt back to the, no. Okay, Steve, I have a motion regarding item number 12, yes. My motion is to direct the BOCC HR Health and Safety to investigate and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners and designated committees regarding claims of unfair employment practices when said employee is not employed by an elected county officer.
Would you reread it, please?
Yeah. Motion is to direct the BOCC HR Health and Safety to investigate and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners or designated committees regarding claims of unfair employment practices when said employee is not employed by an elected county officer. And so again, the other elected officials' HR situation is clearly defined and addressed in the handbook. This has no bearing on this. It's simply those agencies that don't have a county elected officer.
Is that motion, are you recommending that we make a recommendation to the BOCC or just keep it here?
Yeah, correct. Can I punt now? When is the next BOCC meeting? 17 minutes.
Wednesday.
Anything that this board, this group, would instruct Dan to do, obviously can be undone at any point in time by the board. Sure. Given the nature of this, and the board was fully aware of what this committee would be have the ability to do, my motion would be for us to instruct.
Clarification, if I may. Is that your motion if an employee comes to us or if the department asks for it, or both?
Well, here, I didn't put the department comes to us because that currently appears to be the practice. And this, I think the item on the language on the agenda, when it says when an employee, and so I'm trying to deal with the wording on the agenda. So I would say when the employee comes, not the department, I think.
Is this committee going to give notification to those quasi-departments that this will become the direction?
No, that's outside the scope of the motion. It's a good question, but
I think once you start, you show up, obviously.
I think this is an open meeting, right?
right.
Everybody can know.
I mean, if you guys are more comfortable, and I'll certainly withdraw it and say, let's make it a recommendation to the VOCC, I just
Well, I just want
want Dan to get
clarification.
moved.
I mean, my thoughts, especially since if we can reverse it, would be that we would do it here.
Okay. I thought it was a recommendation. I don't think that nullifies necessarily my second. I just wanted clarification because your office wrote the resolution establishing.
I did.
I wasn't aware that was within our scope to actually be able to direct policy. Okay, great. Well then, my second stance.
If you'd be more comfortable, we can get a copy of it, but
I trust it.
I'm trying to pull it up now.
Yeah.
Matt, did you give the information as far as his motion?
I'll give it to him.
Okay.
I'll rewrite it so he can read it, although he's probably getting pretty good at reading my signature.
I don't even try now, I just time them and go back.
So, yeah, that's motion and second to so instruct our HR department.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm a no. The motion carried 2-1. Okay, let's go back to item 14. Talk about the newly created department. And Dan, I think, were we still talking about the staffing levels?
We are.
Okay.
Currently, there's 4. We have job descriptions written for all 4 positions. I can share those with you.
Do you have any thoughts on the staffing levels if we need 4 or 5?
And, with one of the employees of that department sitting here, I'm not sure that the wellness position is a full-time position. I know that is it's an ongoing process that's going on now, and Matthew does a great job in doing that and keeping that awareness out there. I'm not sure what other activities would be included in that position that would make it full-time. And I know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I know Matthew has said to me that he would be interested in staying in the clerk's office and doing ESS payroll and other activities that he's currently doing, if that was available to him. And I know the clerk has made mention that he's going to have to hire 1 or 2
And
people.
Dan, I'm not sure, but we maybe want to kind of forego this stuff as far as conversations that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for keeping me straight. So, in my thought would be that probably 3 full-time employees in the benefits department would be the appropriate amount.
Okay.
And what would those be?
A director, a benefits specialist, and a retirement specialist.
Okay, and then you had mentioned about the job descriptions.
I do have these are draft job descriptions. These, Karen has put these together in the format that the BOCC uses for job descriptions, and those have been sent back to Mr. Wilkerson for consideration and changes. I think we have updated those based on all the information that has gone back and forth, and those are currently the most recent copies of those. And this is the anticipated job duties of these 3 employees.
Do you have one drawn, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
You may.
Do you have one drawn up for the 4th position?
Yes, we do, and that's included in your package.
It is.
Yeah.
1, 2.
Right underneath number 3.
Good place to look.
Has any of these, jobs been advertised yet within the county?
These were posted internally
Okay.
on InfoZone, and the 4 incumbents applied for the position. They were the only ones that applied for it.
Okay.
They have not been posted externally.
Okay, we're just kind of in the research mode now, or just asking the questions, but, I guess one of the questions I'd pose, do you think that we should post it externally?
At this point, I'd say no. We have qualified candidates for these positions. I think there still needs to be an interview process. I think that the expectations of the Board of County Commissioners may be slightly different than under the county clerk, but I don't know that for a fact because we haven't developed an interview guide for conducting those interviews.
Can I ask you a question?
You may.
This could be a complete tangent. I'm just asking for the sake of gathering information. Are you aware of any departments or offices within the county that have any type of shared employee situation?
None that I'm aware of. I don't know if asking the payroll department whether there is or not. I'm not aware of any. I know there are people who work periodically at the election board when we have elections, election night. But as far as working in 2 different departments on a full-time basis, I'm not aware of any.
Would the same be true as far as like a loaned employee or independent contractor type of relationship between one department and the other, or one office and the other?
I'm not aware of any loaned employee situations either.
And the reason, obviously, that I'm asking is because I could see, taking what you said, as far as currently 4 FTEs that are, within this group, if you will, the recommendation of meeting 3 FTEs, but there still being some job that falls within benefits of retirement that may need to be done on a part-time basis. How, because of all the other duties that are shared by that employee, could there be some type of relationship? I know that's done at the state level, where you have essentially a sharing of the salary. It might be the full-time employee of one agency but then this other agency pays a portion to that one for the services that are provided. I mean, again, we have offices all over the state that have attorneys in-house that are actually provided by the AG's office.
Well, let me go back and retract what I said initially. Actually, there is an employee who actually works in my office that we share with MIS, and we pay 6 months of the salary. MIS pays 6 months of the salary, and that's Shanico.
And employee reports to?
Reports to me, but we share the salary. We share duties. She does the financial, the requisitioning, the purchasing, payments, those types of things, for actually 3 departments, court services, but they're only very minor. But she does, we do share payroll.
Great.
6 months on, 6 months.
But they all report to BOCC, all 3 of those.
Yes, they all do report to BOCC.
Elected.
And we
that's
have,
what I understood Randy's question to be, do we have employees that report to multiple county officers?
none that I'm aware of.
It was 2-part. Do we have it with departmentally, or do we have it between offices as well?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any between offices. And yeah, I don't know of any. I'm not sure how that would be done within units. We actually transfer this individual to MIS payroll.
The pay would be done the same way.
And again, it would just be
One, it comes from one account for half, and the other we switch it.
and it may not be a 50-50 split. I mean, again, we're just discussing ideas here. It could be a 70-30, 75-25, I don't know. And again, that potential position be 100% it's full-time employee, if you will, of the county clerk's office, and VOCC provide 25% of that individual's salary for the work that's done.
That possibly could be done.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't see any legal impediment to that, but I know you haven't had a chance to look at that.
I mean, not immediately, no.
Yeah.
To dovetail on the earlier discussion, it would present situations that we wouldn't necessarily have answers for in a joint employer context for liability purposes.
And I could see it as not even a joint employee type situation, but more of just kind of a contractor or a mutual agreement. There's a term that I'm looking for here that I can't grab. But, essentially that we agree to pay 25% because that person's going to provide these services. They're your employee, but, here's the services.
Kind of MOU,
Thank you.
internal MOU.
That's
But
exactly
I think from a liability standpoint, and again, that's assuming there's problems later on down the line, I don't think that would transform them to anything but a county employee. I mean,
Right.
still at the end of the day, they're a county employee. The question would be, who shares the liability?
And I'd look at it like an independent contractor type situation, that the liability remains with whoever is the full-time employee they are.
I doubt that would be the case.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure without doing the research.
So, anyway, it's a thought. I think it's worth exploring. Because
We're just throwing stuff out.
right, I think that's worth exploring because that kind of gives us there's 4 now. Do we need 3 just for those? Although there's some crossover, so really, do we need 3.5 or 3 3/4? I don't know, but I think there's a way to make that happen. Perhaps.
Cody?
I would, if you were talking about crossing elected officials, I would just be concerned about the predicament that you would put that employee in as far as a conflict of interest. You've got 1 elected official, or in this case, 3 elected officials making one body, say, we want you to do this, but they're working for another elected official as well, and that other elected official wants them to do something else, or do it differently. I think it would put that employee potentially into a sticky wicket.
Well, we have that now, though. I mean, when we look at, juvenile that reports to the county and reports to judges that are state employees. I mean, so we already have that kind of.
Right, but look at the difficult situation it puts us in, and by creating this, it would potentially create another difficult situation that we've kind of seen how that operates.
Except that they're on totally different levels. You know, then you're talking about the director of a whole department that has two different entities that are, I mean, county and state, versus, you know, somebody that's coordinating some internal programs, and that's the extent of their job description or the services that they're providing for the benefits and retirement department and otherwise full-time employee.
Can I just go ahead? On the welcome matter. We have BOCC directors who report solely to the board, or are supposed to report solely to the board, who at times get caught up in the wishes of other elected officials that are contrary to the board. I think for whatever employee might fill this role, and again, we don't know whether it is or it isn't a full-time position, it would be better for them to have a clear delineation of who it is they report to. And I think the sharing, I mean, at the end of the day, unless it's special revenue funds, the salary's all coming out of the same pot. It's just a reallocation of those dollars.
Fair enough.
And so, you know, we're not to the point of going down the road, and I do really appreciate the savings or the, you know, how do we employ somebody. But I think it is best that this person, whether they're full or part-time, know exactly who it is that they report to on a regular basis. And they're not having to make a distinction of, well, is this my benefits role or is this my role as XYZ? Because I could foresee a time when those two would be fairly closely associated.
Well, and to address that situation, then I would just reach some sort of agreement or, you know, memorandum of understanding with the office. And again, not even with the individual employee necessarily, but with the office that says, we're going to contract with you to provide our health and wellness.
But essentially that would be, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the board contracting with the board. Because the elected official doesn't have the ability to enter into a contract absence the board. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's the intent of,
Sure.
but it would be the board contracting with the board.
And again, I don't know that has to be a contract per se. I mean, there's all sorts of different vehicles to do that, but, yeah, just between the board and that office.
I understand what you're saying.
And again, that employee reports to that officer, but, you know, that officer has agreed with the board under some sort of arrangement that they're going to provide that health and wellness program or continue to coordinate that or something. Again, it can be done.
For that program, the portion of the program that we're discussing could be absorbed potentially by another VOCC department. If it's a minor, less than full-time position, perhaps it could be absorbed.
Or within the other staff in that department.
That's what I mean.
And I don't even know if I Am Well or, you know, our health contractor provides something like that. I mean, again, there's all sorts of options. I think this is just one that I think would be worthwhile to keep somebody here that knows that does it, but also it's not kind of stuck in no man's land.
I agree, and I mean, there's other things we're gonna have to do, you know, this can still, you know, be on the table, but we still have to look at interviewing the employees, we had to look at setting the salaries of the employees. Now, some of this is going to be done in executive session, obviously, but that's, I think the first thing that we need to talk about, as Dan has indicated.
John wanted to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
he let me finish, so.
Okay.
Just to give you just a little history of the department that you probably don't know, a lot of intricate work functions. And when I came, there's 2 directors, retirement director, benefits director, 3 employee benefits specialists, and 1 data. So since I came here, that department has been reduced from all those positions into what it is now. And then still same functions. And then we've added that wellness piece to it. So I just want to kind of get history of where we were, and where we are now, just so you'll know the history. And that's all I wanted to kind of give you.
and kind of, we're assuming that this department is either going to contract, I mean, there, for all we know, with the BOCC now being in charge of the department, they might like to see an expansion of some roles into areas that we've not previously
Right.
done. And so now an employee could potentially be a true 4th FTE.
Yeah,
So, I mean, just because it was done one way
exactly.
doesn't mean it was right or wrong,
I agree.
but it doesn't mean that it has to always be done that way. And I think
And I think that's part of what this committee's charged with, is to try to recognize some potentially different roles.
And that 3 FTE that you said was just a recommendation, and that could change once it gets going.
Sure.
You could recognize
Yeah,
that
thanks,
there's
John.
more needed, right?
Sure.
You're just obviously looking at what they're doing today. We haven't looked at what they could be doing in the future.
And, yes. And knowing that one of the people does a lot of other duties
Right.
besides just this one.
Can you, and I'm sure, I mean, I know I could look this up online, but since we're here, can you give me the salaries for each one of these positions currently?
Is this executive session?
Can we disclose that information?
public information.
Okay.
Posted on the web.
I was gonna say, that's online.
You can't give any identifying other than what's on the web. Don't give out their social security number.
Let me, I printed a document. At the bottom is the current benefits salaries, but I've also included current BOCC employee department heads as well on that sheet. You may want to tear that off and.
So what is benefits manager is what we're calling employee benefits director?
Yes.
Thank you. That's exactly the information I was looking for.
So do you feel that before we start interviewing the applicants, that we set the salary levels, or do you think it matters? I would think that in the interview process, we could obviously be in a position where we could tell them at that point what kind of salary we were looking at. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah. You sure? Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Several years ago, the county did the famed MGT salary.
2006, 11 years ago.
District 1 has asked you to update those on an annual basis for us as kind of a guide to what WILA does with regard to her merit-based awards. When MGT was done, was the benefits manager, benefits specialist, were these positions included in that original study?
I don't know the answer to that. I have to go back and research.
And where I'm
that.
going with this is, it wouldn't be too terribly difficult to update that to get a,
No, because every position was assigned a job grade, and there's a pay band for each job grade that was set up with the MGT.
when you're updating those, you're doing that typically based on a COLA, is that right?
Yeah,
A
CPI.
And so to go back and to look at what it was then, to see where it may fall in today's dollars
Correct.
could be a guide in looking at setting some of these salaries.
Correct. We've also taken a look at OESC, Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, and gone into the Oklahoma City MSA report and pulled some information on they call it compensation benefit and job analysis specialists.
Are these salaries fairly comparable as currently, well, our duties and salary, I mean, because you gotta look at the duties. Titles could be the same, the duties could be,
Yeah,
best you can tell.
yeah, best I can tell. If you look at, for the benefit specialist, if you look at the 50th percentile on the Oklahoma City MSA for compensation, benefits, and job analyst specialists, it is, 50th percentile is $23.97 per hour. That equates to $49,857. I think currently, the folks we have employed in that area are slightly above that.
So essentially, market rate.
It's fairly close to the 50th percentile of market rate. You look at, they don't have a director position defined on there, but they do have a compensation and benefits manager at the 50th percentile, $40.85 an hour. That equates to $84,968. And it goes way up from there and way down from there. I mean, you can I pulled other data from salary.com, looked at some other things, and numbers go way up from there. I mean, if you were to look at my job in salary.com, it was about $135,000, so I am...
And you're worth every penny.
Exactly, and I will be expecting a raise.
We don't have that ability.
We're having a meeting at one.
I like Randy's punt.
I mean, there are a lot of places that you can pull salary data.
Right.
And some of them are going to be higher, some of them are going to be lower. OESC, for the Oklahoma City metro area, is a pretty good, what I feel like is a pretty good reliable number if you look at the 50th percentile. You can jack that up to the 75th percentile or the 90th percentile and get higher numbers on both of those jobs. Unfortunately, there's nothing for wellness coordinators in there, and I didn't see anything that would even be comparable unless you stayed with the compensation, benefits, and job analysis specialists.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, a question about the OESC numbers. I mean, does that indicate size of organization, years of experience?
It does not.
Things of that nature?
It does not.
Okay, which is how you would weight it towards the 75 or 90th percentile?
Correct.
Or the 25th percentile, if you've got somebody right out of school going to work for a 10-person organization?
Correct.
Again, I don't know kind of what, there's a lot of information here
Okay.
for me to digest. So I don't know what sort of direction, if we plan on providing any direction today. I certainly want to
Well, I think what,
review.
and I agree, I mean, just like your comment originally, I know I need to sleep on that, as far as the prorating, someone working for two different departments. But I think that we may have enough information to possibly go into executive session and discuss salaries. And then at that point, move on to interviewing applicants if the board feels that we have, that the applicant pool is where we want it at now. I mean, I want to take some progress going forward, which we have today, but I want something to meet on next time also.
I mean, on that note again, I don't know if we want to keep discussing. I would be willing to proceed with interviews based on the applicants that we currently have. Now, I don't know if that's getting the cart before the horse, because we haven't really decided.
Right.
Are we going
Either way.
4, 3, 3.5, 8, you know? So we'll probably have to determine that. Are these the positions that we advertise internally?
Yes.
And then if we don't have qualified candidates internally, then we could, you know, send it to the outside, so to speak.
How long was it open, Dan?
8 or 9 days, I think.
And it was posted by internally, you mean?
InfoZone.
InfoZone, which is accessible to
All employees.
all county employees.
And you said you had 4 applicants?
I had one applicant for each of the 4 positions.
I want to know why you didn't get my resume. So,
Obviously, operator error.
Obviously.
Blame MIS.
Yeah.
Apparently it didn't transfer.
Don't tell the commission.
Trying to get out of that clown car again.
With regard to the discussion on the 3.5, 4, 3.
8.
Yeah. I mean, if Randy, sounds like you're willing to sit down and interview these folks. I mean, I think we could make it quite clear that, at least with one of the positions, we're unsure as to whether or not it is a full-time or a part-time, and that may change that candidate position. It would. I mean, I don't know, you know, talking doesn't matter. And in the interim, something might come up that would say, oh, well, it really is a full-time position, and that person might be able to be told that as well. So
I'm willing to proceed under those circumstances.
given that, then sure. I think the board's intent is clear. They want a benefits department.
Right.
We need to figure out how it's going to be staffed. If the internal applicants decide at the end of the day they're not interested, then we need to know that, and we need to move forward.
So basically, you want to start the interviewing process before we determine the salary schedule.
Second your motion.
That wasn't actually a motion.
Oh, it wasn't? Oh, it wasn't?
That was a motion.
Let's do this. Because given, maybe on the salary question, I think what we should look at doing is with most jobs, as Randy pointed out, it depends on your level of experience and expertise.
Right.
I think what we should do is, Dan identified that he had looked at salary ranges, and I think within the job description that we hand to these individuals, it gives that range. Part of the employment discussion is the negotiation of salary.
Okay.
Are you able to identify ranges?
Well, I think if we go back and look at the MGT and look at the job grades that were assigned in, and those job grades may need to be adjusted based on salary duties. We can come up with a range of salary, I think, using the other information that we have as well, and not just the OESC, but other information.
Okay, so then
To define a pay range for.
If you gentlemen would be agreeable, then let's make this a two-parter. I would move that this board instruct Dan to develop a salary range for each position presented based upon the MGT study the county had previously done, OESC, the Oklahoma City MSA study, and other applicable salary guides to be included in the job description that is used in the interview process.
Second.
Thank you.
All those,
Wait, and I want to make sure we're not limiting to those sources. It's essentially,
Including but not limited to. How's that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
on here.
you made a second.
I did.
And motion and second was made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
if I could make a comment.
We'll wait for that.
Knowing, having done this for 13 years at the county and knowing how our processes work, my suggestion is that we consider making this effective on July 1 at the new fiscal year, because it's going to take us a little while to get all the pieces in place and get it done. It's a clean break fiscal year-wise, and it gives us time not to rush to make something happen that we may miss a step.
I agree.
And I can't make a motion.
Well, I mean, it's just, we've got some budgetary things to look at. The BET is going to be winding down here pretty soon. Right now, we've got about $287,000 allocated to the new department. Whether that's enough, I don't know. I'm assuming that's salary and fringe. I don't know. We've got, obviously, insurance, parking, M&O, so...
Cell phone stipends, if that's the case.
Right.
You've got copier expenses, you've got office supplies, you've got potential of new desks, you've got potential...
That I'm assuming, based on yesterday's action, though, some of those are going to go away because they're going to stay where they're at now. So...
Okay.
I would characterize that as for the time being, at least, right? I mean, the board can always change its mind. But back to the whole crux of, are we going to interview these people? If Dan's suggestion of a July 1 start date, I don't think that prevents us from interviewing anyone, especially in the event that those that are interviewed change their mind or don't want to come, or the board doesn't elect to offer. And then we would have to open up and go out, and we would, so it's probably in our best interest to at least go ahead and begin the process of interviewing. Okay.
So if you have to open up because one of the individuals or two or three doesn't want the job, they want to stay in their current employment situation, then you've got, where are these people that you're going to hire from the outside, where are they going to go? Because they're not currently sitting in there. Those individuals stay in their desk, then you can't put the benefits folks that you hire in there, because they're probably not going to share a desk and sit on each other's lap all day.
Well, and again, that's why I said the board could change their mind with all of those types of things, but
there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, but I agree with, we need to start the interview process to kind of decide which way we're going to go.
Might I suggest that we consider interviews next Friday, the 19th, to start that process?
like lots of graduations.
Okay.
But hold on.
Why on Friday?
That way we assure that you're here.
No, it would assure that I'm not here.
Matthew, when do our committees meet? Like infrastructure is not Mondays.
22nd.
Okay. Second and fourth.
And this is supposed to meet on the first Wednesday of each month at 10 a.m. So if we're shooting for the week of May 22nd, then our next regularly scheduled meeting would be June, next Wednesday, which I think is around June 6th or 7th, which I know I'll be out of town, but that shouldn't stop you guys from meeting.
And Cody would probably cover that, I think I'll call him. Are you wanting a special, Dan?
You and Rick can
See, special meeting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't need to
We'll
wait
have a team of the scrubs, you know?
until next month.
And that would be done in executive session.
Right, yeah, we would have to post it, obviously.
What if you guys are setting aside the first Wednesday at 10, I know next Wednesday is not the first Wednesday, but you could do a special that Wednesday. Everybody will probably be here for DOCC. Problem is, the further you put it off, if you have individuals that don't want the position and you have to post it outside, are we going to be able to hit the July 1 deadline?
Are the applicants going to be available? That might shed a little light on it too.
I'm fine with shooting for next Wednesday, May 17th, and it's less than a week, but, you know, there's,
Yeah, can you check on their availability?
sometimes you get half a day notice for a job interview.
17.
Yeah, my only suggestion on the 17th would be perhaps we look at an afternoon.
Yeah.
I think the OCC may run rather long that day. Pauline Meyer is on the agenda, or
Dan, could you just check and Joe at 2 o'clock be good?
Thanks for running my day.
Sure.
Okay, 2 o'clock next Wednesday?
Maybe a little late to start,
Okay, 1 o'clock.
about 1:30.
That's even better.
12:58.
And then let me know and we'll go ahead and get information to Matt and we'll post it for executive session. Any more items to discuss on that particular item?
My only comment would be, we may end up having to recess that meeting if we don't have availability of one or more of the
And that's fine, that's
and
fine.
have to
Yeah,
resume another day.
that's fine,
Neither one of them are here today, so we can't find out.
okay.
I'll send them an email and
Roberta's on vacation.
okay.
So any more discussion on item 14?
Did we hit all the points?
I'm sure we did, but we hit most of them.
Let's take our field goal and take it to a locker room.
Okay, item 13, any new business? Seeing none. Any citizens that wish to participate? Seeing none. Board comments. Joe?
Thank you.
Randy?
Always a pleasure doing business with you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Yeah.